Okay, this is my psychology shelf, just general psychology. So starting on the far right side is textbook. So Abnormal Psychology by Firestone and Marshall, and then study guide for it. So this is stuff I picked up in, was it my master's or was it no, I don't think it was undergrad. I'm not sure, because I did do a psychology course undergrad, so it might have been undergrad. And then I've got beside that cognitive psychology, in and out of the laboratory. I think I picked that up at a bookstore, like a couple bucks bookstore. Okay, now to more interesting stuff. Steven Pinker's The Blank Slate. I did read this when I was doing my master's, and I made notes on it. Like years ago. So it's hazy what it was about. It is about John Locke's theory of the blank slate of the mind. Although some people take it too literally. They think, oh, the child is infinitely moldable. But no. John Locke didn't think that. So Pinker is talking about the blank slate in that context, and not sure if he defends Locke or not, but he might have made the point that it's not that literal. But it's certainly a book on biology, but I put it over here because it's kind of psychology. Pinker writes lots about language and also psychology. But I can't think of a lot to say about it. I read it years ago, but I do have notes on that book with some good quotes. Next is John Bowlby. You might be aware of his attachment theory. That's Bowlby. So I guess there's 3 in a series. I found these randomly at a store near me. So there's John Bowlby's Attachment, Volume 1. Volume 2 is Loss. And then there's another one, I guess. Oh no, this is Volume 3. It says Bowlby's Attachment and Loss Trilogy. Volume 3. This is Volume 1? It must be Volume 1. Yeah, so I guess there's another one. I don't have it, but oh well. So that's attachment theory. So that's about babies attaching to their mothers. And that attachment is certainly part of psychology, but the attachment is important and is part of the development. And if you leave children, there is a theory about if you leave children without any sensory attention, any sensory, if they are in an environment in which they don't feel anything and they don't see anything and they don't hear anything and they don't get any stimulation whatsoever, they actually die. So there's research about the importance of babies attaching to their mothers, and yeah, so that's what that's about. But there's more technical details that I can't think of right now about that stuff. So, but you can look it up on Wikipedia. It's all there. Here's a couple books from Carl Jung, Portable Carl Jung, and Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. He did study, I think in other videos I used to say that Jung was a graduate student of Freud, but that's not right. He studied with Freud. He was around with Freud, but he had his own theories. I think he talks about the shadow. I think Jung has the shadow. So, yeah, if you're interested in that stuff, I guess you could just look it up. Here's Freud. Introduction to Psychoanalysis. An outline of psychoanalysis. This has got a whole bunch of authors in it. This, for example, I'm sure Jung's got a piece in here. Erik Erikson has a piece in there. There's psychoanalysis. I don't know if I really need to say much about psychoanalysis. There's probably enough people who understand the use of the term Freudian. So I don't think I need to say much about that. Here is Stephen J. Coule's The Mismeasure of Man. I think this book was a Versus the Bell Curve, but I'm not sure. So I'll get to that one though. Here's Understanding Human Nature by Alfred Adler. Beyond Freedom and Dignity by B.F. Skinner. I wish I could say more about this book because of course, it's got some interesting conclusions, because B.F. Skinner, of course, was a behaviorist, meaning he studied behavior without the assumption of any mental workings. He merely looked at input-output, and I should say that there's nothing wrong with the method of behaviorism, meaning that what we're going to do is we're going to put a human being or a pigeon or a dog or whatever in a situation, and then we're going to see what they do, and then we're going to measure that, and we're going to measure the input and then measure the output and see what they do with it, and then we're going to call that science and call that data. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That is science and that is data. The question is what you do with it, what it means. That is the question for behaviorists. Behaviorists are fine what they're doing. That's fine with the input-output stuff. But the question for human beings is what it all means, what we can do with that information. So it doesn't matter that they bracket the mind, they bracket that people think about what they're doing. It doesn't matter. But the data that they accrue, it matters what we can do with that, what it means. Here's The Ascent of Man by Bronowski. This is psychology, should be. Social, historical, Ascent of Man. It says it used to be a TV show, I guess. It used to be a TV show. It says here, he charts man's scientific progress from prehistory to modern times. I wonder if that should be anthropology. Oh well, I don't know, I haven't read that. Here's The Moral Animal. Why We Are the Way We Are, The New Science of Evolutionary Psychology by Robert Wright. Can you see that? Uh-oh. I'm kind of blocking it with my shadow, but I can't do anything about that because I'm limited in my light source. There you go. Robert Wright. Haven't read that, but Evolutionary Psychology and Morality, that should be good. Here's Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers on Becoming a Person. Carl Rogers was they call him a humanist psychologist, but he was a therapist. That was his line. That was his main line. There's Maslow, another humanist psychologist. The Farther Reaches of Human Nature. And Towards a Psychology of Being. Don't have much to say about them. Maslow, you may know about the hierarchy of human needs. That's him. Okay. The Bell Curve Wars. The only reason I have this is because Sowell's got a chapter in here. He's right down the bottom here, I think, somewhere. Oh, there he is. Thomas Sowell. So, the Bell Curve Wars, Race, Intelligence, and the Future of America. So, I'll just come right to the chase here. Here it is right here. Probably can see that. Oh, maybe not. Here, look at this monster. The Bell Curve, Intelligence and Class Structure in American Life. Look at that. There's Charles Murray again, stirring up trouble. And Herstein, of course, but I think most people have targeted Charles Murray, not Herstein. So I obviously haven't gone through the entire thing, but it just presents the data. It shows, look, IQ and I think it does do race, and it shows differences in IQ. I think it says that Asians have higher IQ than Caucasian, and Caucasian have higher IQ than African descent. It shows that those from the Jewish tradition have higher IQs, American Jewish and European Jewish, but not Middle Eastern Jewish, I think that's right. So it just asks the question, it presents the data, and it says, well, what does this mean, and what can we do with this? And so obviously there was pushback, because again, remember, the conflict of visions, the ideology, right, that comes up. Rather than just looking at the data and going, it just brings up, well, no, we don't like those conclusions. You can't say that. That's against our ideology, and so you get all that stuff again. So it did bring a lot of flack, and you can look it up on YouTube. You can look up the bell curve, and you'll see all kinds of people, everybody, academics, everyone that rail against it and all that. But I think a more rational approach is to look at their data. You can certainly criticize their methods, but at the end of the day, you have to decide that if they are facts, then what do we do with them? It doesn't mean that certain races are inferior. It has no bearing really on individuals. Thomas Sowell's a black man, for crying out loud. Anyways, he actually is a proponent of tough education. He wrote a piece on, now I'm not going to know. I think it was in the Thomas Sowell Reader. Talked about he had a really tough teacher in one of his schools that really pushed him to, I don't know if it was in grammar or something, but he had teachers that were soft because he lived in the, what's it called? The Hell's, I want to say Hell's Kitchen, but I don't think that's right. There's something like that in, I don't know if it was New York or something, some like ghetto area. And of course, a lot of people get sympathy for that. But Sowell didn't. Maybe for some teachers he did, but he had particular teachers that he says that were extremely helpful, that should not show him sympathy, that showed him the education that he needed, the push that he needed, the struggle that he needed to do well and to advance and to do as well as he had was dependent on those things. So what do you do with a person who thinks like that? That's what I'd like to know from the other ideologists. And here's a last one, Social Intelligence by Goleman. There's been, you may know of Gardner and his multiple intelligences, and he used to have, there was 9 intelligences, and then there was 11, and then there's 9 again, and they're trying to break the hegemony of IQ, because IQ, of course, measures logic and mathematical intelligence, and many people don't like that is, they like to use the word privilege, for example. They don't like that is made superior or made that it is all that matters, because they also, I want to say invent, but they also establish that there are these other intelligences like interpersonal and intrapersonal and musical intelligence and kinesthetic intelligence, like you're a good dancer, and what else? There's a bunch of them if you look up the Gardner stuff. And it's unfortunate, but it's important to say, because of the ideology that is bereft in education, I often wonder whether Gardner's work is merely ideology pulling in and trying to keep it alive, the ideology alive, or a tactic. And that's unfortunate, because it's very possible that Gardner's work is objective and is factually based and is important. But unfortunately, because education research is often done in the guise of ideology, you have to suspect research. So, anyways, that is psychology.